There's always going to be a hierarchy in a group of men. Always. We're never just next to each other. There's always a hierarchy. If you deny the hierarchy, it just becomes a dysfunctional hierarchy. Normally it'll become a kind of like based on like weird, fake, feminine virtues. Might be interested in it.
Yeah, Richard's in India, so he'd be probably very happy to see it.
Yeah, he definitely enjoys talking about the 10 principles. Hey, Richard, good to see you. Hope you're enjoying India. Yes. So accountability as a principle means, I've looked into the roots of the word, and it comes, of course, from counting. But counting more in not just like in the sense of like, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it means to give a reckoning or even an explanation. Mainly it comes from if you lend some money to somebody, then they are accountable for that money. And that doesn't just mean always that they give the exact amount of money back, but often there's interest, or, there's stories about that are being used about like, like having to give an account for what you've done with the money. So there's a responsibility, and we have to explain and justify what we've done over a period of time. The Latin word accountable or counting comes from also computare, which is to like, to compute. So it's to kind of like add things up and to see what the total is. So there's something there about judgment. And that's what I wrote on the Telegram group. There's a judgment, a value judgment that happens with accountability. At Manifesto, one thing we do is we commit to accountability. And I've been thinking about, what does that actually mean? Well, what I've decided, I wrote down a definition. Maybe I should share my screen with you guys so you can see what I'm talking about and follow along. So I said, can you see the accountability thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
At Manifesto, we commit to accountability. This means we agree to compare our words to our actions over time and allow the judgment of others on our misalignment or alignment or incoherence or coherence. In short, we strive to be men of our word. Why do we do this? Well, and what's the purpose of it? Well, this is some of the thinking that I have of trying to get a bit of a meta level. We live in a society where judgment is seen as bad and evil, and tolerance of all things, especially specific things, is seen as a really, really good thing. But of course, we're not tolerant of everything, but just specific things. But we notice that in this setting that there are specifically a lot of men who are yearning for accountability in their life. And so thinking a little bit about judgment, accountability as judgment, then what I think it has an important function at the highest level, then judgment brings justice to the present moment. So human beings naturally yearn towards, or instinctively yearn towards, justice, and therefore we also yearn for judgment. Wisdom traditions, they would say that judgment is a part of the natural order of things, that there naturally comes a judgment. In Eastern religions, we call this karma. In ancient Greek philosophy, we call justice one of the 4 cardinal virtues. This is something that is independent of all, kind of normative, time-based things. It's always there, justice. And in Christianity, Christ, who's the central figure of Christianity, is seen as a judge, especially regarding his second coming. We won't go into that right now. Not so much in his incarnation. A core thing to understand here is that in all of these traditions, judgment is often something that is delayed. It doesn't happen straight away. So if you're a bad person who goes around doing bad, dishonest things, manipulative things, you actually like this. You prefer it that judgment is delayed, because it means that you can push away the consequences of your actions for as long as possible, and you can enjoy the fruits of your misdoings. But if you're a good person who's aiming towards the good, the beautiful, the true, towards justice, then you yearn for judgment to come. And you don't specifically yearn for your own judgment, but you yearn for what one calls objective or divine judgment or justice. So that is why we look for the judgments of other good men who we look up to, not just, of course, that can never replace, the judgment of existence, but it's an indicator for us that helps us to stay on the path. And especially we look for the judgment of father figures in our life, because as human beings, we need other people to hold us accountable for what it is we say we want to do. We're very good at rationalizing our actions when we actually aren't doing the things that we said we're going to do, and we try and explain them away anyway. And we also forget about our commitments, or try and kind of make it seem for ourselves like we're actually committed to something, then what, to make it seem like we did what we're planning to do. So what we actually need is other people in a social process to help hold us accountable. And the more that those people are, we especially look for the judgments and judgment to be held accountable by other good men. And I think there's really a relationship of trust that's in there. Maybe I need to put something about that in there. But definitely there's something that, like, how we need to be able to trust the people that we ask to judge us and to be able that hold us accountable. Of course, some things are very simple, but for any of us who've been in a core team, we notice that there's often a layer of complexity in interpreting what's actually happened and what I said I was going to do. And to figure our way through that, we need to build up trust between each other. So yeah, that's the main points that I wanted to get across. There was a couple of points that I wanted to add to that, or I was not sure about that I wanted to add to that, but I thought could be added. One of them is the point about honesty and dealing with social shame and appearances. So we have to be like clean dealers here. And a lot of the time, then we will tend to overcommit to things, and then we'll try to twist the truth, even for ourselves, to maintain our self-image, our own ego image of ourselves. The next point, human judgment is always flawed, but it's better than nothing. If we want a man with a pure heart to judge us, maybe I've said this a little bit earlier, this is the judgment of a good father. One thing I just thought about was that in business terms, personal accountability, like mechanisms of personal accountability, is a little bit like a lead indicator. A lead indicator is something that you can use to see how things going in my business before I reach the year end. Like, did I make a profit or a loss? I have some things that I know, okay, well, if I'm getting lots of people coming and visiting my website, then there's a good chance that sales are going to pick up in the future or something like that. So instead of just measuring my sales, I also measure traffic to my website that tells me how things are going in the future. So in that way, accountability is also like a lead indicator for if I'm living a good life. If other men are judging my integrity and my ability to do what I say at a high level, there's a good chance that things are going in the right direction. Sometimes we go a long way before we realize that we're heading off course. And the last one was a little bit more related to Christian theology, which is something that Christ said. He said that the measure that you measure with will be measured back to you. So this is something like, if I'm very judgmental about other people, then I'm going to often be judged by the same measure. So sometimes if I'm a little bit more allowing and less judgmental about others, then maybe I will also be judged by a less harsh stick as well, something like that. I don't know if any of those final points are relevant or not, but I put them in there just for now. So that was it for my input to hear. I'd love to hear any points you guys have on, or anything that you picked up there that sound interesting or relevant.
I love the part about trust because I have some bad experiences sometimes with that, and we do have a lot of trust in Avalon. So that's probably one of the reasons why we are doing a good job with this, because I actually think that's one of our strengths. Mm-hmm. So I love that part.
What do you think is the basis of trust in Avalon?
That's a really good question. The first thing that comes to mind is that we are sort of similar, even though that we are from different countries. So we have Bulgaria and United States, and of course Sweden. I guess also another factor is that people are very interested in and are willing to ask the tough questions, which means sort of implicate that if you're going to give me this answer around your deepest insecurities, you have to put your trust in to me. So I guess that's also like the willingness to go deep into why you say these things, or why you have this kind of goal, or why you haven't made it. So the trust rather comes from somebody asking you to have trust by going deeper and asking more detailed questions that are closer maybe to your inner pain, or that are more intimate.
Yeah.
So the intimate questions, I think, is one of the keys for us, at least from my perspective.
Do you think that like a level of commitment is important there? Like the fact that someone isn't going to just leave, even because you're risking that someone's get offended and it gets uncomfortable, and then like the risk is that then they just leave, right? So there has to be a level of commitment even through discomfort.
Yeah, we have had, situations where people have been more absent just after sort of a conflict, and but they actually came back. So that's one of the strengths. But yeah, it sort of it messes with the fabric of the situation. So definitely commitment in just attending and just being there, trying to do the work, even though it's messy and you might not do it well. But just trying to do work and trying to do deep work. That's a core thing when it comes to this trust level. And I had other situations with other adjacent groups where we did not manage to get that because we weren't on the same page, and then the trust was violated, and then the structure sort of just evaporated, and I left that group just on that basis, quite recently actually. So yeah, because
can you be a little? Can you tell? Would you mind telling us what happened when you said the trust was violated? Like, how was?
Yeah,
the trust?
so the trust was violated in that sense where I had a willingness to take this intimacy from Avalon and being very open with my issues and being very open with my inner deep thoughts, and that also discovered in the Avalon calls. But then when we had a conflict and we tried to sort of resolve it, some of those things that I've shared was used against me. And the structure of the meeting with the leadership that didn't recognize that this could be a violation, but rather it was more of this kind of idea to not have it prepared for me and not have it structured, and just having it spontaneously come out that, yeah, we shouldn't talk about this subject because this triggers me. And then you had 2 or 3 other people just coming at me and saying, yeah, because you told us this before. So that is my argument against you now. Specifically was like just a topic that they didn't want to have brought up too much, the topic about woke, because they didn't feel about that. But then they used these arguments and they took things that I said in confidence as arguments against my character, or at least that's how I perceived it. And that violation was sort of in the basis of that. I see in hindsight is that I was maybe trying to be too intimate and to be revealing with myself in order for me to grow, and but also for the other people to feel comfortable with that. But they did not match me for various reasons, and that is completely fine. But then when the structure came in to sort of have a conflict around another topic, then a violation of my trust was on the basis where they used arguments against me that I had said in confidence, and I wasn't prepared, and we didn't have a structure around it. So that's why I left that group.
So it sounds to me like the kind of willingness to be tough and to go deep and to get uncomfortable with each other needs to be balanced with a kind of deep respect and care and consideration to not misuse something against somebody that's been said in confidence, and not to exploit vulnerabilities as well. So there needs to actually be something else there than just a willingness to like get really uncomfortable.
Yes, and another very, very important point is that the leadership of that group was not very competent. So in order to have this group, you have to have strong leadership, and I think that we had Tab before, and now we have Daniel, who's just continuing on that structure. But the leadership is key, because whenever there's a conflict, or whenever the structures start to crumble a little bit, it's very important for the leadership to be prepared and have a plan of action to deal with that. So leadership, I would also say, is very, very important.
Yeah. So there's a container and principles that can kind of create clarity about how to establish the dynamic of the group, really.
Yes, most definitely, and to also have that structure set up from the beginning, which this group didn't have. So I was a little bit naive of trying to bring in Avalon to this other group. So that's also on my responsibility. So for various reasons, this occurred, and I think it just gave me a very good example of where we should match each other's commitment, and to have a good leadership. That's two big things in order to build this trust that is so key for being accountable in a real way.
But I just add something there, something that just sort of comes out for me in what you're sharing, is that there needs to be the right motive behind sort of accountability. So you don't want to sort of just score points with the other person or against the other person. You need to have their good at heart. And so whatever you bring, or if you're going to hold someone accountable, it needs to be done in love rather than out of a sense of animosity or rivalry.
Yeah, and not be provoked. If you're provoked by another person, there should be structures and very clear ways for you to bring that critique forward, and not to hold it inside and just have it burst up spontaneously and do this feminine thing where you sort of talk about people behind their back, and then you plan, like, next time he says this. That's the sense that I got. And so if you're provoked by a person, which I think I was the initiator of, so I take full responsibility on me having to leave, because it was on my part a lot also. But I think that the structure is that there are going to be people who are sort of triggered by you and your goals in life and what you're doing. And in order for you to have that relief of that trigger, it needs to be addressed in a very direct manner, in a very fair manner also. So yeah, that's what I really feel was lacking in that situation.
I'd like to challenge the usage of the word judge. I don't think it's the best word to use here, and I've been thinking about this word a lot recently. I've had a lot of conversations, and the reason that a lot of people don't like to use that word is because it usually entails some kind of value judgment in terms of good or bad. And I think the judgment, or the kind of judgment that we do when we hold someone accountable, is different from that. It's different also from Christ sending people to heaven or hell. It's a bit different from a judge. It's more, in my eyes, a observation or a mirroring or witnessing, where you simply say, hey, this is what it looks like for me from a slightly more objective perspective than the one that you can have as the person who's in your own shoes. And I think that's already enough. It doesn't necessarily have to be judging. I think just having that kind of a little bit more objective external mirror is already enough. And of course, there's some pressure with that. So it's not just completely value free. But that's for me makes more sense, the word witness.
Don't you think, Achille, though, that there is always, in however you want to apply it, there is a value judgment there, whether it's good or bad? So you're sort of always saying, even if you're coming from a sort of that, I'm going to present a more objective perspective perhaps on this, there is that judgment there. You're saying that behavior is good, that is bad. So I don't know how you can escape that idea in the Old English, there's they use a word prove. So judgment and prove is sort of like the same thing. And you see that in sort of the picture of in front of most some courts, they have justice blind and she's holding scales in her hand. And the scales are about proving, about making a judgment. And so for me, that's what judgment is. It's about proving what the nature is of that which you're judging. So when a judge in the court brings his judgment, he's basically saying, we've investigated, we brought all the evidence, we've considered it, and this is what we have found. And so in that same sense, we're proving the value, say, of the practice, and saying, look, this is a really low bar that you're setting. And you can push yourself more, you can do better. So I do get your concern with the meaning that judgment can sometimes have for people, but we mustn't sort of forget that there is always a value judgment there, and sometimes even a moral judgment, sort of just it's wrapped up in the whole process.
I believe that value judgment is more effective if it happens in the person who asks for accountability, and less effective when it happens from the other side, because there are these ego barriers that rise immediately when someone else tells me that something I'm doing is bad, unless it's someone I really admire a lot.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, Achille, that the most effective type of judgment is when it's like a conviction in your own heart and an insight in your own heart, not just based on social pressure. So sometimes social pressure is helpful. Sometimes being in a group of guys where there's a specific standard, but it's because I look at these other guys and I admire some specific qualities in them, and I mirror myself in them, and I see like, oh, I want to be more like this. I want to be more like this. That's the most effective one. Whereas maybe you're right that I can reframe this. I mean, I do think that all judgment is value judgment. I think that there's no way to have it, even if you talk about karma, I don't know if you believe in karma, but karma, you have good karma, bad karma. Obviously, good karma is good, bad karma is bad. There's a value judgment. I don't believe that, anybody coming into Manifesto is looking for value judgments. Otherwise, they would never come. Obviously, they're coming to Manifesto because they think it's better to be inside than to be outside. And we want to prove them right by lifting up, and up is better than down. So there's a constant value judgment in Manifesto. Always we don't believe in just the flat deconstruction of everything being the same. We believe that some things are vertical, and the masculine element is the vertical element that lifts up some things above other things. But I also think you have a good point in saying that there's a risk of us applying our personal value judgments onto other people or projecting them onto other people, and that can often become dysfunctional. And the more that value judgment, it's difficult, because what I'm trying to say with this topic here is that I think that our society's gone too far on this point. I'm trying to say like that postmodernism and deconstructionism has totally, flattened any kind of external markers of success and said, no, we're all winners, we're all the same, we're all identical, and I think that people are hungry for something else. But I think I don't think it's a coincidence that postmodernism has gone that way. I think part of the reason is because the only value judgment that really matters is the one that happens inside your own heart, that you become convicted of through a first-hand experience of reality somehow. You need to know these things for yourself for them really to be effective. And so that's why I more see this kind of like accountability process, not as the standard, the objective standard to live up to, but the lead indicator. And actually what I see as the most important is I call it divine judgment or divine justice, which is a mystery. It's outside of, we could never understand it fully. We can never comprehend it fully. It's ineffable. It's unconceivable, but it's something that we somehow all yearn towards as human beings, that there is something like a pure justice that exists and that we maybe see in glimpses, right? This is like the transcendent aspect of man. And it is that transcendent level that we aim towards, and we have a very weak, bad heuristic, which is just the opinions of the other guys around us. So we try to find the best possible guys and we listen to them, but it's never the same as that kind of like personal touching of the transcendent. So I think it's a good point that you made, and maybe we could have a little bit more of that in there. It can just scare people away if I talk about divine or transcendent justice. Like some people don't like that, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely a bit more on the side of subjective value, where everyone can decide what's good for them and has only very limited ability to decide what's good for others. So the process of accountability for me is a possibility to give the other person insight on whether what he or she is doing and how it is either compatible or not compatible with their own value system. And also what it can do is give them a input or an impulse to update their value system and say, hey, you should probably be thinking about this. You're not including that in your own value system.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a nice word which I discovered by talking to many people about this, which is discern. And that's the word I now use. I say, I want to discern things, because that includes the idea that you can say what's good and bad for yourself. And you can definitely reject things that are not good for you and say, hey, I really don't want that in my life. That's really stupid for me, without necessarily saying that in a general sense.
But we can also discern general principles. And Manifesto is built on that idea, right? Like the reason why we have 10 principles is because we believe, it's like some people will disagree with our 10 principles, but then they shouldn't be in Manifesto. Like, if you believe that men should be more feminine, then you shouldn't, then you wouldn't join us. That's okay to believe that. I'm completely fine with people believing that. And I even believe that some people living that way would probably make their life better, to believe that men should be more feminine. Like maybe there's some people where that really helps them a lot. But Manifesto is an organization for people who like, believe that like they like being masculine men instead of being feminine men.
I agree. There are some principles that we can state generally, but I don't think those principles usually are relevant on this level of accountability and checking each other's habits.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah,
a bit more
the low level stuff, like normally we misjudge and project.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. We do a lot more projection and seeing ourselves and our own failings instead of seeing other people's failings. I absolutely agree. And that's why the mirroring, just listening, witnessing other men in their lives and their difficulties and their pain is so important. It's good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we need to put in more about the witnessing, mirroring aspect of our work. I can see that. And that's what really builds trust, is the ability to just listen to each other instead of having to it sounds like what happened in Jesper's group was that someone was identified with a specific set of beliefs and needed to push those beliefs onto another man and felt almost like attacked as a human being when another man contradicted those beliefs about reality, instead of just being able to be there together as a group of guys and listening to different perspectives.
Yeah, that's true. That is actually what happened, which is the whoops. It's climbing. So yeah, that's actually the core of the conflict. But then yet again, everything's happening for a reason.
Alex, do you want to push back on all of this?
Not push back. I do sort of find making the subjective difficult to sort of integrate into my way of thinking, perhaps. So for me, I tend to be sort of a black and white kind of person. Gray areas aren't my forte. And I think when you start to sort of make it very subjective, it becomes quite a gray area. So if someone says to me, I'm going to do X, and they don't do X, well, then they've failed. They've promised something they've not kept up to. And if I'm going to, challenge them on that and say, you said, but you didn't do, if they come back to me with sort of, well, I sort of did it, and in my view, I've actually accomplished what I was looking to do, it doesn't float for me. I need a more solid distinction. But I do think that you don't want to force someone to a standard that is arbitrary or artificial. So I think that when we do hold each other accountable, the standard of accountability is set by the man who makes the commitment. So if I've committed to something, I'm setting the standard. And so to kick back against the standard I have set and asked implicitly to be held accountable to, that really for me sort of is a bit like weaseling out of a situation I've put myself in.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say one more thing. I'm going to ask Marty if he has any input for us. I think the very first point that Jesper had was pretty important when it comes to how much we can do this. The first thing he said was that we have similar, we're in similar situations or something like that. I interpret it as we have similar worldviews. Yes. So when you share a worldview with somebody, you have a similar understanding of what the world is, what human beings are, then you can push each other a little bit harder. But when you have differing worldviews, different understandings of who and what you are, then it's just not going to work when you do that. It's going to actually just lead to conflict and problems. So it's a strength of a homogenic group is that you can push each other harder on more objective levels. But when you don't have a similar ontology, like you actually disagree about what reality is, then this becomes far more difficult. And then you just need to more be doing, I believe that there is objective truth and that objective truth shines through, but it needs to be done much more with patience, and just like this kind of witnessing, mirroring processes helps them to come out instead of like, I think a lot of the problems that we have in the world today of misunderstanding each other is exactly just differing people with completely different worldviews trying to apply their own moral standards to people who just don't share their same worldview. And I think that causes a lot of unnecessary conflict. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Marty, what do you say to us?
Well, a lot of things that I resonate on, and I don't know if they're well. I'll just start. First thing is about, is it a judgment or is it something else? Like a judgment is a kind of border that feels that has to be protected. Like, hey, this is the wrong thing. Like a judge is telling what we as a community have defined as this is the border where you stay, of the boundary where you stay within. If you get out of that, then we do something with you, punish you in one way or another. And while accountability is more like, I do something, I like Alex said, I say something and I do something. And that's more their own boundary that you state that you do. And for that, the reflection part is very important. Like, it's that you feel you are seen, and that is something I think is the key things of being human, is that you want to be seen by others. And that's also in your actions, in your deeds. And when you say you do something, you will be seen if you do it or you don't. And when you reflect something, it's only, hey, I see that you did it. I see that you did not do it. And that is a very powerful mechanism towards humans, that you see someone, whether it's in the positive or the negative way. And that is also a kind of global, what you said, Paul, is what is justice? What is right or not? How do you feel the divine justice there is. Everybody feels what is just to someone, and can you stay true to that? And you have to be seen by that. So that is why it is important to have a community within that. And it doesn't mean that everybody is equal, but it does mean that there's a kind of equality. If you say that someone is that you're a bad person, you put yourself above someone. And that kind of way in the divine energetic world, there is nobody better than the other. It doesn't mean that somebody doesn't have more experience, or that someone is better in doing something like that. Like you can find a mentor or a teacher or whatever because he has more experience and is more is better in something. Then it's in the hierarchy, somebody can be on a higher level, but it doesn't mean that he is morally better. That's the difference, in my opinion. And to say what you can do to improve yourself, that is by the experience you have, and that's a kind of equality there is between somebody who wants to go to a higher level and the other who is already there. But they find themselves as equally committed to something without having the same experience level. So these are some thoughts that I had on this subject.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to say, like, I mean, I really hear everything you're saying, Marty, and everything you say is true. And then for me, it's all like kind of, and it's a little bit in the same vein as Achil. It's all pulling in a more feminine direction. It's the feminine principles of witnessing and being with, and accepting, and mirroring. It's the holding, and like maternal love is that which will just witness. The paternal love, the father job, is to have a standard and to judge. That's what fathers do for their sons. That's how sons become men, is that there's something that they have to live up to. They have to become independent. They have to perform. They have to achieve, right? And so it's like, I totally hear what you guys are saying. And yeah, it's like when you judge someone, yes, you're placing yourself above them in some way that's dangerous for you in a spiritual sense as well. But it is what we do in masculine groups.
But that is also what you say. Like a father, you are giving your son, and you have a lot of sons. You give your son their kader. What do you say? Their frame of life. Hey, this is the frame that I'll hand over to you. So that is what for you is right and wrong, and your son can decide if that's true or not. That's what you do as a father. And when you come
really
together,
small, he doesn't get to decide. He just has to do. Like I tell my 3-year-old son, like, this is dangerous. You don't get to do this. This is bad. He doesn't have any decision there. I enforce my worldview onto him. It gets forced. Like if he bites his little brother on, he's bit his little brother like 3 times. That's just not allowed. It's impermissible. If he runs out onto a road where there's traffic, it's not allowed. I will force him not to do that. I force my worldview onto my son because I have an objective view on reality which he lacks, and so therefore he is forced into understanding my worldview, and he has to obey it. He has no choice in the matter.
But you can't do exactly that with peers who are on the same level.
No, but we're talking about the fatherly principle at an abstract level. So
true,
obviously,
but I'm challenging
I can never do that on a core group. Obviously, that's true.
I'm challenging that idea that the fatherly love is what we want to bring to the accountability mechanism, because we're not each other's fathers, but rather brothers.
So I'd call it paternal love, and there's that is, of course, there's a fatherly level to it. I'd say it's a mix. It's a mix because brothers are really good for us. But when we're just brothers together, we create the Lord of the Flies. Like then it just degenerates into rivalry. So we need something. We need to be able to recognize that different men have different strengths, and to be able to look up to and admire men in specific areas. And there's always going to be a hierarchy in a group of men. Always. We're never just next to each other. There's always a hierarchy. If you deny the hierarchy, it just becomes a dysfunctional hierarchy. Normally it'll become a kind of like based on like weird fake feminine virtues. The male hierarchy then becomes based on that. So when we admit that there's a hierarchy and we explicitly seek to define that hierarchy, and we allow for fatherly kind of reparenting to happen in a core group, then it becomes far more functional. If we deny it and say, oh no, we're all just equal in absolutely everything, that's a very fake feminine approach to things. That's what women do. They all insist on equality all the time, but then there's this hidden dynamic underneath where they're actually, things are happening at multiple levels. And in men, it's much more healthy to just make that explicit, and to say like, no, we do have a hierarchy. We do have things that are better than others. Here's in this community, in this group, these are the things that we see as important.
And I'm afraid I'm going to need to stop it there. A really great point where I think we could go into a whole new discussion. But I think that's really good, thought-provoking stuff, and encourage everyone to do just that. Think hard on this, and whatever other input you have, it'd be really great to hear that.
And so I've taken a lot from what you guys have said. I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to put in more of the feminine principle for you from you guys, just to make sure. I did hear you.
Great. Can we do a checkout?